we're a bunch of big, goofy dorks up on stage having the time of our lives, right?
Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Belgian Jasper. If this is your first time in the channel, hit subscribe right now. All right, Tim from Assimilator. Thank you so much for your time today. I very much appreciate it. Interesting name for a band, especially as you are in full assimilation or adapting to a new state. Because let's address the elephant in the room before we go into anything else. Assimilator is kind of like a new band, but it's not really. You know, for people that are newer to the band, help them understand where this band comes from.
Yeah, so we started off, it was me in a bedroom project in Chicago. Hadn't played guitar for quite some time, kind of took a break, was raising my daughter, went to New Zealand to play rugby, came back, continued playing rugby in Chicago, and then decided to pick up the guitar again. Called the project Laser Wolf at first, but that name was already taken by a band in Atlanta, so switched to Death on Fire. Released a collection of demos, came to Fort Wayne, where I'm originally from, linked up with some friends, and then started playing shows. Across the years after that, we started to write a little more as a group, kind of solidified the lineup. Instead of having, you know, whoever was available to go play shows, we have more of a solid lineup. And then it just seemed to make sense. Hey, you know, Death on Fire always was kind of embarrassing to tell someone like my band name because it felt so generic, right? And it was like kind of not us. And then it just, you know, we were kicking around a million different names and kind of landed on Assimilator, which I always liked just because I'm a huge fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation. People kind of already connected the dots with that, and I used to watch that as a kid with my dad. Like, that was my Friday night before I went out with friends. So like, that's how we kind of came up with that name.
First question I have to ask you, as an American playing rugby in New Zealand, what were the worst misconceptions to overcome?
Thankfully not too many, because everyone thought I was from Texas. But I think that's just because they had a lot of people that were playing from Texas there. So they were actually well-traveled, pretty nice people. If I could do it all over again, I'd have stayed longer. It was fun.
Yeah. I see a beautiful crest tattoo on your forearm there. What regions of the world are we representing?
That is my mother's maiden name, the McNeils, from the Isle of Barra in Scotland.
Let's focus on what we are here to talk about, which is the new album, the first Assimilator album. Should we then also consider this as a bit of a clean break of what happened in the past, and should we consider this the first album of a renewed band?
I guess you can. Yeah, I mean, it's the next logical step from where we were, but it's definitely, when you listen to it, the songs are more thought out. You can hear the collaboration in the composition, so it's definitely a maturation of what we were. So.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when and I had the chance to listen to the album, when you do listen to the album, there's a couple of things that jump out. But first of all, I mean, yeah, you mentioned like, well, you know, we're more mature as a band. There's more collaboration going on. Whether or not it was recorded as such, but it comes across as very much a live vibe with the record. How did that recording go? Like, what is that something that you kind of had in mind, where you want to go like, hey, you know, this is, you know, our music is music for a dark, you know, sweaty venue, and if you listen to the record, you have a good idea of what you're gonna get? when you see us play, or is it just more kind of happen naturally?
Yeah, I mean, we like vibe, right? I mean, I like old school death metal. My favorite recordings sound like complete crap, and you hear all the fuzz and the hiss, and you can tell someone did it on a 4-track. And it's one of those things where we recorded drums at a separate room, and then we did all of the guitars and bass and vocals in the room I'm sitting in. Like, we have a pretty decent home studio.
Okay.
But it was all recorded organically, right? Like, we mic'd up the cabinets, we blended the microphones, we tried not to do huge EQ moves. Like, the tone we got is the tone we wanted. All we had to do is notch a little bit of space here and there to get the sound. And I want it to be raw, right? Like, we like that energy. It should be impactful. I'm not a fan of like the modern super clean production. Like, the production should speak to the character of the songs. And that's kind of what we were going for. So it was definitely intentional.
Are the members individually as diverse as some of the sounds that you bring to the table, or are all you guys sort of on the same page? You're like, is there that one Chromax guy and that one Helmet fan and then a couple of Death fans, or is everybody a little bit on the same page?
I am probably the least on the same page as everyone else. So, like Indiana, especially like northern Indiana, it's a hardcore scene, right? And that's just, it's like Midwest hardcore. And then, so I grew up listening to hardcore and thrash, and then just like the deep dive into death metal, and eventually like, prog and stuff like that. The other guys are into, I don't know, like Tom Waits, King Wizard and the Lizard Gizzard, just like all over the place, right? And then like we all love 80s pop. We'll listen to early punk. So it's a little bit of everything, and it's really one of those things where someone might come in with this idea and you're listening to it and you're like, okay, that's, clearly like this Tom Waitsy macabre singer-songwriter vibe. How do we make that into a metal song? And then we start to toy with it and churn it through different iterations until we get something we like. I think the biggest thing is like I write a fair amount of the guitar, and then Kyle on drums kind of adds that flavor and that swing and groove that has it pushes the feels around versus just being hardcore and metal.
From the lyrics perspective, there's also a lot going on there. There's a lot of, in your face, very personal, emotional lyrics there. From a lyrics perspective, is this a collection of songs, or is there also that story that's weaving through? Because I haven't fully picked up on that yet.
It's more a collection of songs. Like it's one where there's a bit of a story, because it was all written at a time where I was pretty angry about some things that were happening in my life, and pretty it was pretty pointed at a few specific people that I felt could have been doing better, and because of that, you'll hear some consistency within like the themes of certain songs, but you don't necessarily see like all of the connective tissue, right? Because it was written like The Fall, right? That's about me reflecting on my grandfather. Like, he had an aneurysm walking up the stairs when he visited my mother and fell down the stairs. So that's a song about literally me watching my grandfather die. So like that's, it's deep, it's heavy, but it's also like, does that connect with me saying, hey, this person over here is a real jerk and I don't like them because of how they're treating me. Not so much, but it's the flow of the album is really, looking at kind of the human experiences I've had it so far, and just writing about that, right? So like Slave is about watching people that I care about struggle with addiction. Carry Me Home is about like the reflection of the memories of me watching my younger brother go into the military and have to deal with what he's dealt with since he's been back. So it's just things that I've observed and kind of a snapshot of who Tim was up until the point that album was written. We're a bunch of big, goofy dorks up on stage having the time of our lives, right? Like, we're making music with friends, meeting new people, and having a good time. So even if I'm singing about dark, angry stuff, like, I'm still cheesing out up there. So it's never a bad thing. I don't think I've had a single song where I've thought, like, oh, this is a little more than I want to deal with, you know, because it's taking, for me, it's taking what I'm writing about, trying to make it not specific to me, right? So that other people can take away from it whatever they might want to. And then that song can become whatever it is for them. Because I kind of am of the opinion that once you release the art out there, it's no longer just yours, and people are going to do with it what they want.
Talking about creating art, when I'm sure you're already thinking ahead about, you know, next albums and so on, given your t-shirt, I assume that the next album cover art will feature some happy little trees and happy little squirrels that you're painting, or?
Oh yes, the happy little universes. No, it's so we're actually about a third of the way through the writing process, and this one is probably a little more like traditional, right? I've been wanting to work on the way I write lyrics, and I think Randy Blythe, in his early career, not as much later, but in his early time with Lamb of God, I thought wrote some amazing stuff. Been a huge fan of Trevor Strnad. I thought he wrote some great stuff. So it was kind of looking at the way they write, and then, you know, it's a little less about like any personal struggle I've had, and more like philosophical and like, you know, just like weird, dark situations. Like I thought, I was reading an article after Trevor had passed about how he wrote this song just thinking about like eyes sitting in a jar on a shelf in a laboratory or something.
We now already know that we might not have to wait too long for more music from you guys to come our way. But before we get to that point, everybody watching this video, like, what can they expect in the immediate future from you guys? Obviously, the album's coming out, but is anything already shareable about supporting that album live?
We're doing a bunch of weekenders across the Midwest with our friends in Carrion Vale, who just recently signed to Unique Leaders.
Fantastic album that they released, by the way.
Yeah, oh, it's great. And then Severed Head Shop, who recently signed with Everlasting Spew. So we know those guys quite a bit. We played with them a ton. Decided to do a bunch of weekend dates, so that'll be October through mid-November. And then we are working on putting something together for March next year into April, running out to the West Coast and back up through Texas. So probably about a 2-week run. And after that, you know, who knows? We'll see what's out there.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, we'll keep our eyes open for all those announcements and everything else that is coming our way. Tim, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I am super excited for you guys to, I'm just going to call it your new debut album coming out in just a little bit. And I hope that you get to enjoy that release cycle to the fullest.
Awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.